Just thinking about that story of the Magi, how God got a hold of them using a star of all things. And got me thinking about all the different ways that God gets a hold of us and the different ways he brings us to Jesus. And just invited Tyler to come forward and share a little bit about his story this morning, about how God got a hold of him. And maybe Tyler's story will help you to reflect a little bit more on your story this morning, too.
Thank you. Good morning, friends. Well, I've never felt my heart beat this hard in my life, so this is pretty exciting. But if we haven't met yet, my name is Tyler, and I wouldn't mind saying hello after the service, and thank you, Pastor Mark, and our Father in heaven for this opportunity, and thank you all for bearing with me. I will do my best to keep it sweet. So throughout my childhood and leading into my adult years, I was never really involved with the church per se, but occasionally my mother would take us to a gathering, and we would go to Christmas Eve service pretty irregularly, but even then, when I stood there with my family, I never fully understood the weight of what was happening. I never knew there was a loving God, a Father to us all, living above, a Father that I could surrender my life to, a God that had a plan for me. So not knowing this, I tried for many years to navigate life on my own, and well, it was not great, often, very often. But I'm very thankful for what happened because it led me here in this moment with all of you. And I think that's pretty sweet. But anyway, in my years following high school, I started wandering around the country all by my lonesome, becoming very exhausted from trying to white-knuckle life. However, during this time, I will say, an obsession with trying to talk or communicate with some unknown higher power up above started to grow in my mind because thankfully I was smart enough that I knew I needed some sort of guidance, but I wasn't quite sure where from. And it wasn't until about March of last year, I was back in Kansas, working in a warehouse, burning out from doing life on my own. Fed up one day, I just looked up and I asked, am I really alone on this journey? And I received no response until the next day. And I will never forget, I was placed in the only spot of my department that required one worker, which is rather odd for me because I kind of did everything but that. And it wasn't until the wonderful Miss Shauna Bryant, the only openly Christian woman that I worked with, walked up to me and asked me about my spirituality and if I knew Jesus Christ. She told me she's been meaning to ask me about him because the Lord said to her in a prayer a couple months prior for her to be ready because my time was coming. But she said to me that he's ready to help me, and I was ready for that too. He was ready to give me a purpose for his kingdom. And so me, being the type to never turn down the opportunity to jump into something head first without thinking about anything whatsoever, I started running at full speed. And since then, I've been chasing him every day, all the way back here. It hasn't always been easy, and usually that's my own fault, but that's just part of the journey. And but thankfully, by the grace of God, I've been able to grow in his love and mercy. I've been able to plant seeds and harvest for his kingdom, and I am eternally grateful for him and the work I've been able to do for him. And I'm grateful he gave me the eyes to see his star in the sky, and I've been following it ever since. Thank God and thank you.
Hey, thank you, Tyler.